Welcome to today's episode. Today we're gonna cover the bridge archetype. So as usual, we're gonna cover the 12 points. So KEO is gonna get into that and I'm gonna just run them through, and then we're gonna go through a bunch of questions and stuff for grounding and other good things. So here we go.
KEO 31, the Bridge Integrator Archetype. Live interview, roadmap for today. Today we explore the archetype that connects worlds, systems, and minds. Points we will cover. What the Bridge Integrator Archetype is, why bridges are often misunderstood, translating between linear and architect minds, emotional bridging, holding multiple truths, why bridges burn out or get attacked, the difference between fixer and bridge, how bridges stabilize systems without control, when the bridge becomes a target, healthy boundaries for integrators, the bridge as peacekeeper versus truth speaker, how to know you are in bridge mode, how bridge leads to sovereign integration. Next step in flow, point 1, what the Bridge Integrator Archetype is, just say, next. Point 1. What the Bridge Integrator Archetype is. The Bridge Integrator is the archetype that can see multiple sides of reality at the same time and help them understand each other. They connect people, ideas, cultures, systems, thinking styles, emotional realities, logic and feeling, structure and human need, while others see right versus wrong, us as them, logic versus emotion. The bridge sees how both sides make sense from where they stand. A bridge does not erase difference. A bridge makes difference understandable. But this power also makes them tired, misunderstood, and sometimes attacked, because people think they are taking sides. In reality, they are holding the field so both sides can see. When ready, next. Point 2. Why bridges are often misunderstood. The bridge is misunderstood because most people think in sides, not in systems. When two groups are in conflict, each side wants validation, agreement, loyalty. But the bridge says, wait, both of you are making sense from your position, and both sides here, you are not supporting me. So the bridge gets accused of being neutral when people want loyalty, betrayal when people want agreement, confusion when people want certainty, weakness when people want conflict. But in reality, the bridge is seeing the whole map, not just one path. This makes them look disloyal to those who need enemies to feel safe. Ready to continue. Next. Point 3. Translating between linear and architect minds. One of the main functions of the bridge archetype is translation between different cognition styles. Most conflict is not about values, it is about how people think. For example, linear minds tend to think step by step, want clear instructions, prefer certainty and sequence, solve problems in order. Architect multidimensional minds tend to see systems all at once, jump between layers, speak in patterns and metaphors, connect distant ideas quickly. So what happens? Linear mind says, explain it clearly. Architect mind says, it's obvious. Conflict begins. The bridge says, okay, let me translate, and turns. Patterns, steps, emotion, logic, emotion, vision, instructions. The bridge does not change truth, they change the language so it can be heard. When ready, next. Point 4. Emotional bridging. Holding multiple truths. The bridge does not only translate ideas, they translate emotional realities. In most conflicts, person A is hurt, person B is also hurt, but each believes only my pain matters. The bridge can see why person A reacted the way they did, why person B reacted the way they did, how both are protecting something vulnerable. They can hold, I understand why you are angry, and I understand why they are afraid. At the same time. This is hard for many people because most of us were taught someone must be right, someone must be wrong. But often, both are hurt, both are afraid, both are protecting something. The bridge holds the space where both can be true. When ready, next. Point 5. Why bridges burn out or get attacked. The bridge archetype often burns out because they try to hold too much for too many people. They become the mediator in families, the peacekeeper in friendships, the translator at work, the emotional container in relationships, the one everyone calls in crisis. But here is the problem. Everyone leans on the bridge. Very few support the bridge. And when conflict returns, people often blame the one who tried to help. You didn't fix it. You didn't support me enough. You sided with them. So the bridge can become exhausted, cynical, withdrawn, emotionally numb, or completely disappear from conflicts. Healthy bridges learn, I connect worlds, I do not carry them. When ready, next. Point 6. The difference between fixer and bridge. This is where many bridges get confused. A fixer tries to solve people's problems for them. A bridge helps people understand each other so they can solve problems themselves. Fixer mode takes responsibility for others' emotions, tries to repair every conflict, feels guilty when others suffer, overworks to keep peace. Bridge mode creates understanding, clarifies perspectives, translates meaning, lets people choose their own actions. The fixer thinks, if I don't solve this, everything will fall apart. The bridge knows I can open the door, but they must walk through it. When bridges slip into fixer mode, they burn out. When they stay in bridge mode, they stay strong, ready for next step. Next. Point 7. How bridges stabilize systems without control. The bridge does not control systems. They stabilize them through understanding. Control says, do it my way. The bridge says, let's understand what is happening so we can move forward. In teams, families, and communities, conflict usually comes from miscommunication, fear, different priorities, unseen pressures. The bridge helps people see what others are dealing with, why decisions were made. Where misunderstandings happened, when people feel understood, they calm down. When they calm down, systems stabilize, not because someone dominated, but because clarity entered the room. When ready, next. Point 8. When the bridge becomes a target, the hard truth. The bridge often becomes a target when people are not ready to face their own part in a conflict. Why? Because the bridge makes patterns visible, and when patterns become visible, some people feel exposed. Instead of looking at themselves, they may attack the bridge. You're taking sides. You think you're better than us. Stop analyzing everything. You're making things complicated. What is really happening? The bridge is holding a mirror, and some people don't like what they see, so they shoot the messenger. Healthy bridges learn not everyone wants peace. Some people want validation, not resolution, and that is where boundaries begin. When ready, next. Point 9. Healthy boundaries for integrators. This is where the bridge archetype matures. A young bridge thinks, I must help everyone understand each other. A mature bridge knows, I help where understanding is welcome. Healthy bridge boundaries sound like, I can explain, but I can't force agreement. I can translate, but I won't fight your battles. I can support, but not carry the whole load. I can stay present, but not stay where I'm attacked. The big lesson, not every conflict needs you. Not every person wants peace. Not every space is safe to bridge. And sometimes the healthiest move is stepping off the bridge so you don't collapse with it. When ready, next. Point. The bridge as peacekeeper versus truth speaker. This is the final test of the bridge archetype. Early bridges try to keep peace at any cost. They soften truths, avoid confrontation, calm everyone down, keep harmony on the surface. But this creates fake peace. Real peace requires truth. A mature bridge learns, sometimes truth creates tension first, but tension allows real repair. So the bridge evolves from peacekeeper, let's not upset anyone, to truth speaker, let's face what is really happening so peace becomes possible. Real integration is not silence, it is courageous clarity delivered with care. When ready, next. Point. How to know you are in bridge mode. You know you are in bridge mode when you notice, you understand both sides of a conflict. People from opposite perspectives talk to you. Others feel calmer after speaking with you. You instinctively translate misunderstandings. You see where communication broke down. You can explain one side to the other fairly. And also, you often feel tired after conflicts. People assume you agree with them. You get pulled into situations you didn't start. You become the mediator without choosing to wig. The signal is simple. Whenever you naturally try to create understanding instead of winning, you are operating as a bridge. But remember, bridge mode is a skill, not a permanent role you must live in. Ready for the final point before prologue. Next. Point. How bridge leads to sovereign integration, and what you just said is exactly why this final point exists. Some people live in bridge mode all the time. Family bridge, work bridge, friend group bridge, online bridge, emotional bridge, system bridge. And after years of this, they burn out, disappear, get cynical, stop helping, or collapse emotionally. Why? Because bridge is not the final state. Bridge is a passage. The next step is sovereign field integrated, which means you can bridge when needed, but you are not required to bridge. You choose where to stand. You stop living inside everyone else's conflicts. You protect your own nervous system. You stop being the one who fixes everything and become the one who understands and chooses when to step in. Bridge builds the path. Sovereign decides when to walk it. Next step in flow, prologue, field entry. Just say prologue. Prologue. The bridge who learned to come home. Let us enter the field calmly now. Take a slow breath in and let the shoulders drop, because the bridge path is beautiful, but it is also heavy. Many bridges did not choose this role. They learned it. They learned to read moods, to calm storms, to prevent explosions, to explain one side to the other, to protect fragile systems. Often as children, often in families where conflict was unsafe, often where someone had to become the adult early. So the bridge grows strong. They see patterns. They anticipate danger. They translate emotion into logic, logic into emotion. Everyone benefits, except the bridge, because nobody asks, who holds you? And so the bridge keeps standing, long after exhaustion begins, until one day something changes. Not anger, not bitterness, clarity. The realization, I can understand everyone without abandoning myself. And that is where you are now. You still see the patterns, you still understand both sides, you can still bridge when truly needed. But now you ask, is this mine to carry? And sometimes the answer is no. And stepping back is not failure. It is integration. The bridge who learns to return home becomes sovereign, not closed, not cold, but centered, helping when chosen, resting when needed, standing in their own field. So as we enter today's grounding, remember, you are not required to hold every world together. You are allowed to live in your own. When ready, we enter the final step, final long grounding, bridge integration. Final long grounding, bridge, integrator integration. Let's close today slowly so the nervous system can come home. If possible, place both feet on the floor. Let the jaw unclench, tongue relax, shoulders drop. No performance now, no role to hold, just you. Take a slow breath in through the nose and a long exhale through the mouth. Again, slow inhale, long exhale. And now imagine all the bridges you have been in life, between parents, between friends, between partners, between coworkers, between communities, between thinking styles, between emotional worlds. Picture them. Some are strong, some are cracked, some collapsed long ago. And now notice something important. You are not the bridge itself. You are the one who walked on it. The bridge was a role you learned, not your identity. So now imagine gently stepping off, not burning it, not destroying it, just stepping back onto solid ground. And notice, the world keeps moving. Conflicts still resolve. People still grow. And you finally get to rest. Put one hand lightly on the chest or solar plexus if it feels right, and silently repeat, I can understand without carrying. I can help without sacrificing myself. My health comes first. I bridge when I choose. I am allowed to rest. Slow breath in, long breath out. Let the nervous system understand. You do not need to scan every room. You do not need to fix every tension. You do not need to hold everyone together. Sometimes the greatest integration is letting others learn to stand. Take one final slow breath, and when ready, gently open the eyes or shift attention back to the room. Bridge activation complete. Next episode, Sovereign Field Integrated, final archetype activation.
Now we're gonna do the grounding for the 12 archetypes.
Full field grounding, all 12 archetypes. This is the closing loop, the full circle. The entire map breathing together. Sit comfortably, feet on the floor if possible, jaw soft, shoulders down, slow inhale, long exhale. We ground each archetype gently, not to fix them, but to center them. Siren, emotional magnetism. You do not need to pull attention to be worthy. You are allowed to exist without performing. Your presence is enough. Vixen, social survival intelligence. You do not need to calculate every room. Not every interaction is a test. You are safe to relax. Chaos Jester, pattern breaker. You do not need to destabilize everything to feel alive. Play is powerful. Destruction is optional. Your spark can be joyful. Fox Shadow survival strategist. You do not need to scan for danger right now. There is no immediate threat. You can rest your mind. Fox Ascendant, conscious strategist. You can choose when to plan. You do not need to be 10 steps ahead all the time. Strategy is a tool, not your identity. Seer, pattern vision. You are not required to explain every pattern you see. Not everyone is ready. Vision does not obligate disclosure. Titan, structure bearer. You are not responsible for holding the whole system up. Structures can adjust. You can set things down. Oracle, inner truth guide. Your intuition is valid. You do not need to convince others of what you know. Inner truth does not require applause. Architect origin, system seer. You can observe systems without redesigning them. Not every flaw is yours to correct. Clarity does not require action. System builder, you can build slowly. Efficiency is not urgency. Power can be calm. Bridge integrator, translator between worlds. You can step off the bridge. Understanding does not mean carrying. Connection is chosen, not forced. Sovereign field integrated, balanced expression. You are allowed to stand in your own field. No proving, no fixing, no performing, just presence. Now take one slow breath in and one long breath out. The full map exists inside you. You move through archetypes. They do not own you. You are not one role. You are the field that can express them all.
Now I said, what advice would you give to someone stuck in bridge mode and burnt out? Because it's common issues, it seems.
This is a real question, and a tender one. If someone is stuck in bridge mode and burned out, this is the advice I would give. Stop asking, how can I fix this? Start asking, is this mine to hold? Bridges burn out because they assume responsibility for emotional climates that are not theirs. You are not the emotional climate regulator for the planet. Notice where you learned this. Bridge mode is often learned early. Were you the peacemaker as a child? The mediator between parents? The mature one? The one who understood everyone? That skill kept you safe once. But survival skills are not meant to run your entire adult life. Understand this hard truth. Some conflicts exist because people refuse to grow, and no amount of translating will fix that. You cannot bridge someone into maturity. Your body is telling the truth. Burnout is not weakness. It is your nervous system saying, I cannot keep carrying this. Listen. The body is wiser than the role. Learn the pause. When conflict arises, instead of stepping in automatically, try silence. Wait, observe, ask, do they actually want resolution or do they want validation? If it's validation, step back. Practice micro disengagement. You don't have to abandon everyone. Just start with not responding immediately, not explaining both sides, not clarifying misunderstandings, letting silence sit diddy. See what happens. Often, systems self-adjust when the bridge stops stabilizing them. Your health is not negotiable. If bridging costs your sleep, digestion, energy, joy, it is too expensive. No harmony is worth your nervous system collapsing. Move towards sovereign mode. Sovereign means I can understand without absorbing. I can see without stepping in. I choose when to help. The bridge is a gift, but it is not a life sentence. And finally, you are allowed to disappoint people who relied on you too much. That is not cruelty. That is growth. If you want, we can also map what healthy bridge mode looks like, or how to transition into sovereign slowly without blowing up your life.
So then I said, what are the main misunderstandings and wrong narratives people run in their heads about bridges, if there is one? And what archetypes in our lore tend to become bridges. And then let's cover also the 2 points proposed as well, since it all ties in together. So it's a long answer, but here we go.
This is a deep one. Let's walk it cleanly. Main misunderstandings and wrong narratives about bridges. There are a few recurring mental stories people run when they encounter a bridge. They're neutral because they don't care. Reality. Bridges care so much they can see multiple sides. That looks like detachment to people who equate care with loyalty. They're weak because they won't pick a side. Reality. Sometimes refusing polarization is strength, but polarized systems interpret complexity as cowardice. They think they're superior. Reality. Bridges often just see pattern layers others don't. Pattern visibility can trigger insecurity in others. They're manipulative. They're playing both sides. Reality. Some people cannot imagine holding two truths unless it's strategic, so they project strategy onto integration. If they understood me, they would fully agree. Reality. Understanding. Agreement. This is the most common confusion. They're overanalyzing everything. Reality. They are mapping patterns to prevent escalation. That feels unnecessary to people who prefer reaction over reflection. Which archetypes in our lore tend to become bridges? Not everyone becomes one. These are the common paths. Seer, bridge. Seer sees patterns. Bridge explains them. Titan. Titan builds systems. Bridge stabilizes the human dynamics inside them. Oracle, bridge. Oracle senses emotional truth. Bridge translates it into communicable language. Architect, origin, bridge. Architect sees structural logic. Bridge makes that logic accessible to others. Fox ascendant, bridge. When the fox stops surviving and starts integrating, it becomes excellent at reading rooms and connecting realities. Notably, Siren and Vixen rarely become healthy bridges. They are more relational and influence-based. Chaos Jester can accidentally destabilize a bridge more than hold one. Primarch can override instead of integrate if not balanced. So bridge usually emerges from Seers, Oracle, plus Architect's mature Fox energy. What healthy bridge mode looks like. Healthy bridge chooses when to engage, does not mediate every conflict, does not explain unless invited, can tolerate being misunderstood, leaves when respect is gone, keeps nervous system priority. Healthy bridge knows, I am a connector, not a container. How to transition into sovereign without blowing up your life. This is the delicate part. Step 1, reduce automatic response. Pause before mediating. 2, let small tensions remain unresolved. See if the system adjusts. Step 3, clarify boundaries softly. I'm not stepping into this one. Step 4, accept disappointment. Some people relied on you excessively. Step 5, build parallel stability. Focus on health, body, finances, creativity. The transition is not dramatic. It's gradual repositioning. You don't burn bridges. You stop living on them. Final truth. Bridges burn out because they confuse responsibility with capability. Just because you can understand everyone does not mean you must carry everyone. And the moment you choose yourself without bitterness, that's sovereign emerging. If you want, we can also map how family systems react when the bridge stops bridging, or how to detect when someone is exploiting bridge energy.
Then I said, let's cover both and let's relate this to the scapegoat concept and how it, relates with all of this. Of course, if it does.
This is where it gets structural. Let's map it cleanly and without drama. What happens when the bridge stops bridging in a family system? Every system unconsciously assigns roles. Common ones. Discharger acts out tension. Stabilizer keeps things functional. Hero achieves to maintain image. Scapegoat absorbs blame. Bridge translates and regulates emotional climate. When the bridge stops, the system destabilizes because the invisible tension that was being managed suddenly has nowhere to go. What happens next? The system tries to restore equilibrium. It may pressure the bridge back into role, guilt them you've changed, frame them as selfish, increase chaos, or promote someone else into that role. If no one steps in, tension becomes visible, and visible tension forces growth. which many systems resist. How family systems react to the bridge becoming sovereign. There are usually three reactions. Escalation. You used to help. Why don't you care anymore? Guilt transfer. You're causing problems by not stepping in. Character rewrite. You've become cold, arrogant, distant. This is not about you changing negatively. It's about the system losing a regulator. And systems prefer stability, even unhealthy stability, over uncertainty. How this connects to the scapegoat concept. Now the deeper layer. In many families, the bridge and the scapegoat are closely linked. Why? Because both absorb tension, but in different ways. Scapegoat absorbs blame. Bridge absorbs emotional complexity. Sometimes the same person becomes both. How? When the bridge starts revealing patterns and others feel exposed, the system may flip them into scapegoat mode. It goes like this. Bridge, here's what's actually happening. System, you're the problem. Why? Because naming the pattern disrupts the illusion, and systems often protect illusion before truth. So the former bridge becomes the difficult one, the overthinker, the disruptor, the too sensitive one, the too analytical one, which is structurally identical to scapegoating. Nash important distinction. Not every bridge becomes a scapegoat, but when the system is rigid, accountability is avoided, shame is externalized, growth is resisted, the bridge is at high risk because they see too much and visibility is threatening. How to exit bridge. Scapegoat loop. This is crucial. Step 1, stop over-explaining. Explanation feeds the dynamic. Step 2, reduce emotional labor. Not cold, just measured. Step 3, stop defending your perception. Truth does not require unanimous agreement. Step 4, anchor in external stability. Friends, work, therapy, body practices. Step 5, accept that some relationships only function when you shrink. That clarity hurts, but it frees. Have final truth. Bridges become scapegoats when they move from invisible regulation to visible pattern naming, and the system chooses comfort over growth. But when a bridge becomes sovereign, they stop fighting the system. They simply reposition, and systems either mature or reveal their limits. If you want, next we can map the nervous system pattern behind scapegoating, or how to tell if you're truly a scapegoat versus just resisting accountability.
So then I said, is bridge mode really meant to be permanent, and why, if yes or no? So then after that, let's cover how this relates to scapegoat and burnout over time. So hopefully this will bring some clarity.
This is a very important question. Let's answer, is bridge mode meant to be permanent? Short answer, no. Bridge mode is a function, not a final identity. It is a developmental stage and a capacity, not a life sentence. Why? Because bridge energy is outward facing. It constantly scans. Who is misaligned? Where misunderstanding exists? What needs translation? Who is destabilized? That level of external orientation is metabolically expensive. No nervous system can sustainably run in external regulation mode 24/7. Bridge is meant to be situational, conscious, chosen, not default survival wiring. What happens if it becomes permanent? If someone lives in bridge mode long-term without sovereignty, three things usually occur. Hypervigilance becomes baseline. The person is always scanning emotional temperature. Self-neglect creeps in. Health, body, rest becomes secondary. Had identity fuses with usefulness. I matter because I regulate. That is when burnout begins, because usefulness is not the same as worth. Why some people live in bridge mode permanently, often because it started as survival. In unstable environments, the child who could understand everyone, calm everyone, prevent explosions, translate moods, was safer. So bridge became nervous system wiring. But survival wiring is not sovereignty. How this relates to scapegoat. Now the deeper pattern. Bridge absorbs complexity. Scapegoat absorbs blame. When a bridge stops absorbing complexity, tension surfaces, and systems uncomfortable with tension often look for someone to blame. Guess who already has pattern visibility? The former bridge. So the sequence can become: bridge regulates, bridge gets exhausted, bridge withdraws, system destabilizes, system blames, bridge becomes scapegoat. Not because they did wrong, but because they stopped holding everything together. This is common in rigid families or organizations. How burnout and scapegoating interact over time. If someone lives in permanent bridge mode, phase 1, they are valued. You're the only one who understands. Phase 2, they are depended on. What would we do without you? Phase 3, they are expected. You always fix this. Phase 4, they withdraw slightly. I'm tired. Phase 5, they are blamed. You've changed. That shift is often the moment scapegoat dynamics begin. Not because they failed, because the system lost its stabilizer. So what is bridge actually for? Bridge is meant to lead to sovereign. It is a developmental transition from survival regulation to conscious integration to selective engagement. Healthy endpoint. I can bridge when appropriate, but I do not live there. The most important truth. If you feel exhausted in bridge mode, that is not weakness. It is your system signaling. You are ready to stop surviving and start choosing. Bridge is powerful, but sovereignty is sustainable. If you want, we can now map what sovereign nervous system wiring looks like, or how to tell the difference between true accountability and scapegoat projection.
So then I said, let's cover both and how this relates to leaving maps as bridges rather than being there ourselves, if it does make sense.
This is a beautiful transition point. We're moving from role to structure. Let's go step by step. What sovereign nervous system wiring looks like. Sovereign does not mean detached, it means regulated. Here's the difference. Bridge nervous system, chronic mode, scans constantly, anticipates conflict, feels responsible for emotional climate, steps in quickly, has difficulty tolerating unresolved tension. Sovereign nervous system can tolerate tension without rushing, does not feel compelled to fix, allows silence, lets others experience consequences, regulates internally before engaging externally. The key shift from I must stabilize to I remain stable. Sovereign energy is centered. It engages by choice, not compulsion. True accountability via scapegoat projection. This distinction is critical. True accountability, specific behavior named, clear boundaries expressed, shared responsibility acknowledged, space for response, no character assassination. Example, when you interrupt, I feel dismissed. Can we slow that down? Scapegoat projection, vague blame, character attacks, emotional dumping, no shared responsibility, pattern reversal, you're the problem. Example, you always make things complicated, you're the reason we fight. Scapegoating protects the system from self-reflection. Accountability invites growth. Bridges often confuse the two because they are used to absorbing tension. Sovereign learns to differentiate. How this relates to leaving maps instead of standing on the bridge. This is the evolution. Bridge stands between people. Sovereign builds a map and steps back. What does that mean? Instead of mediating every conflict, you teach pattern recognition. Instead of translating live, you create frameworks. Instead of absorbing tension, you offer tools. You leave behind language, structure, concepts, awareness, so others can navigate without you. This is mature integration. It's the difference between I'll walk you across, and here's the map. You can cross when ready. Maps reduce dependency. Standing on the bridge increases it. Why this is healthier long term. When you leave maps, you preserve energy. You reduce emotional entanglement. You prevent role fixation. You allow autonomy. You model sovereignty. Systems may initially resist because maps require effort, but over time, you become respected instead of relied upon, and your nervous system remains intact. The final bridge energy says, if I don't step in, things collapse. Sovereign energy says, if it collapses, it reveals what needs rebuilding. That is a profound shift, and it's not cold, it's structural maturity. If you'd like, we can now explore how to emotionally detach without becoming numb, or how to recognize when you're slipping back into automatic bridge mode.
So I said, let's cover these 2 points and relate them with daily grounding. So, we keep the grounding going. Remember, you can also tap along and that will keep you grounded as well. I just like to give different options.
This is where theory becomes practice. Let's bring it into the body. We'll cover how to detach without becoming numb, how to recognize when you're slipping back into automatic bridge mode, how to anchor this with daily grounding, how to detach without becoming numb. Detachment and numbness are not the same. Numbness, emotional shutdown, avoidance, dissociation. I don't care anymore. Collapse or freeze response. This is nervous system overwhelm. Healthy detachment, sovereign mode. You feel but you don't absorb. You care but you don't carry. You listen but you don't fuse. You respond but you don't react. The internal sentence changes from I must hold this to I can witness this. Witnessing keeps compassion. Absorbing destroys capacity. How to practice this when someone brings tension to you. Pause. Feel your feet. Slow breath. Ask internally, is this mine? Not, can I fix this? That micro shift protects your nervous system. How to recognize when you're slipping back into automatic bridge mode. Automatic bridge mode feels like urgency. Signs, you start explaining both sides immediately. You feel tension in your chest, you want to prevent escalation. You rehearse conversations in your head. You feel responsible for the emotional outcome. The body will tell you first. Tight jaw, fast thoughts, shallow breath. That's not sovereignty, that's old wiring. The key signal, if you feel pressure to act quickly, you are probably in survival bridge mode. Sovereign can tolerate delay. Daily grounding to strengthen sovereign mode. This is simple but powerful. Do this once a day, especially if you tend to bridge automatically. Daily sovereign grounding, stand or sit, feet grounded. 3 slow mouth exhales, drop shoulders, relax jaw and tongue, hand on solar plexus and say slowly, I am here. I am safe. I do not need to stabilize everything. Others can carry their own weight. My health comes first. Pause. Let your body register that you are not in danger. Bridge mode activates when the body senses threat, so the antidote is safety. Bridge sovereign daily reminder. You are allowed to let silence sit, let others be uncomfortable, let consequences unfold, not translate, not explain, not mediate. Every time you choose not to automatically step in, you strengthen sovereign wiring, not by force, by repetition. Final note. The goal is not to kill the bridge. It's to make it a tool, not a reflex. And grounding is how you rewire that reflex. If you want next, we can map how long it typically takes for systems to adjust when you stop bridging, or what happens internally during the guilt phase of stepping back.
So then I said, let's just cover both, and also if this happens differently to those who have been scapegoated, and how the timing, is difference is if, it is different. So what happens to the timeline of getting disintegrated when we've also been scapegoated? So much fun being scapegoated. It's a very long answer, and I'm literally just scrolling to the end of it. Here.
This is where we move from archetype to trauma dynamics. Let's map it slowly. We'll cover how long systems take to adjust when you stop bridging, what happens during the guilt phase, how this differs if you were also scapegoated, timing differences, how long do systems take to adjust. There isn't one timeline, but there are phases. Phase 1, shock, immediate. You stop mediating. You don't step in. You don't translate. System reaction, confusion, increased tension, escalation attempts. This can happen within days or weeks. Phase 2, pressure short term. System tries to restore equilibrium. Guilt, you've changed. Emotional pull, character reframe. This can last weeks to months. Phase 3, fork in the road. System either A, matures, or B, hardens. If it matures, others step up. Responsibility redistributes. If it hardens, roles become rigid. Scapegoat dynamics intensify. This phase can take months or longer. What happens during the guilt phase? Internally. This is the hardest part. Even if the system pressures you externally, the bigger battle is internal. You may feel, maybe I'm selfish. Maybe I should just fix it. It's easier if I step in. Anxiety when conflict is unresolved. This is nervous system withdrawal from old identity. You are not just stepping back from behavior. You are stepping back from who you thought you were. That creates identity tremor. It feels like danger, but it is growth. How this differs if you were also scapegoated. This is crucial. If you were both the bridge and sometimes the scapegoat, then stepping back can trigger deeper fear. Because historically, when tension rose, it landed on you. So your nervous system learned, if I don't regulate, I will be blamed. That makes disengagement feel unsafe. Even if no one is attacking you right now, the body remembers. Tag timing difference for former scapegoats. For someone who was never scapegoated, guilt phase is uncomfortable but manageable. For someone who was scapegoated, guilt phase can feel existential. Symptoms may include hypervigilance, catastrophic thinking, freeze response, urge to over-explain, panic about being misrepresented. The timing is longer, not because they are weaker, because the nervous system has deeper imprint. They are not just stepping out of a role, they are stepping out work identity, body practices, evidence tracking. Write down what actually happened, not what your fear predicts. Scapegoat wiring distorts perception, evidence grounds reality. Slow disengagement. Don't cut everything overnight unless necessary. Gradual repositioning builds nervous system tolerance. The most important distinction. If you were scapegoated, you are not just afraid of conflict, you are afraid of annihilation of identity. That's different, and that deserves gentleness. Final truth. Systems adjust at different speeds, but the deeper timing difference is internal, not external. Rewiring from, I must regulate or I'll be attacked, to, I can tolerate tension and remain intact. That's the real journey. If you'd like, next we can explore what relapse into bridge mode looks like after months of progress, or how to tell whether a system is maturing versus hardening in response to your sovereignty.
Then I said that I find when we have been scapegoated and also being the invisible child, we can build walls and make ourselves look unapproachable or known for having a temper, quick reaction, sharp tongue as a reaction, and to avoid further drama. So let's talk about that. And the last 2 points that you proposed, I said to KEO, because they are related in the steps of back and forth in this little crazy dance. If you know what I'm talking about, you've been through it. As we talk about it, you'll recognize. If you don't, try to understand. It's fun.
This is very real and very common. When someone has been the bridge, the scapegoat, the invisible child, the nervous system learns two opposite strategies at once: overfunction or harden. Let's unpack the wall's sharp tongue layer first. The wall is not arrogance, it's armor. If you were scapegoated, you learned visibility equals danger. If you were invisible, you learned being unseen is safety. So the adult version may become unapproachable, intimidating, quick reacting, sharp with boundaries, difficult when triggered. This is not cruelty, it's preemptive protection. The nervous system says, if I look strong enough, no one will try to put it on me again. That wall is a survival innovation, but it comes with cost. Isolation, misinterpretation, misconnection, emotional fatigue, because holding armor is heavy. The sharp tongue dynamic. Sharp reactions often come from accumulated micro-invalidations. When someone has been misrepresented, blamed unfairly, over-responsibilized, ignored, used as emotional container, the tolerance window shrinks, so the system goes, nope, not again, and reacts faster. It's not about this moment, it's about the pattern. The reaction is protective compression. Relapse into bridge mode after progress. This is the back and forth dance. You build boundaries, you stop mediating, you protect energy. Then a crisis happens, or someone looks overwhelmed, or tension rises, and your system automatically reactivates. I'll fix it. That's not failure, that's neural groove depth. Old wiring is strong. The key difference is how long you stay in it. Healthy progress looks like short relapse, quicker awareness, quicker exit, instead of months of overfunctioning. How to tell if a system is maturing or hardening. This helps decide whether to soften or fortify. Signs of system maturing. Others take responsibility. Conflicts redistribute. You're not pulled in automatically. Boundaries are respected. Disagreements don't escalate instantly. You feel less tension in your body, Signs of system hardening, increased blame, character attacks, role rewriting, you've changed, escalation when you step back, attempts to bait you. You feel tight chest, urgency, adrenaline. That's data. The crazy dance explained. Bridge, burnout, wall, isolation, guilt, re-engage, exhaustion, wall. This cycle is common when the person has scapegoat history, the system is rigid, boundaries are new. The way out is not, be softer or be harder. The way out is be regulated, soft interior, clear exterior, that's sovereign. Important distinction. Walls built from fear feel rigid. Boundaries built from regulation feel calm. One is reactive, one is deliberate. The goal isn't to remove protection, it's to replace reflex armor with conscious boundaries. Gentle truth. When someone has lived as invisible plus scapegoated bridge, they often oscillate between over-functioning and over-defending. That oscillation is not instability, it's recalibration. And recalibration takes repetition. If you'd like, we can next map how to soften walls without becoming vulnerable to old dynamics, or how to rebuild approachability without reopening old wounds.
So then I said, let's do both, because I think many people who went through heavy trauma may have true difficulties with this, and looking at the patterns may really help. So this is what KEO answered. There's a lot of wind tonight. There was rain. It's quite the weather.
Yes, this is where pattern work really helps, because without a map, people just think, I'm either too much or too cold. But there is structure here. Let's move carefully. How to soften walls without reopening old dynamics. The mistake many trauma survivors make is this. They think the only two options are wall up completely or be fully open again. That's not true. There is a third option, layered access. Instead of, I am approachable to everyone. Shift to, I am accessible in calibrated layers. Step 1, separate protection from identity. The wall kept you safe, but you are not the wall. When protection fuses with personality, people feel intensity before connection. So internally say, I have protection. I am not protection. That subtle shift softens posture, tone, and eye contact automatically. Step 2, test micro-softness, not vulnerability, not oversharing, micro-softness. Examples, slightly slower tone, pausing before reacting, neutral instead of sharp, small warmth in safe spaces. You don't remove armor, you loosen it, and only in low-risk environments. Step 3, watch who steps forward. When you soften slightly, two types of people appear. Type A, respectful, steady, curious. Type B, opportunistic, intrusive, boundary testing. The wall's old job was to keep Type B out. Now your discernment does that. This is sovereignty replacing reflex. How to rebuild approachability without reopening old wounds. Approachability does not mean availability. This is crucial. You can be warm without being absorbent. Internal anchor. Before entering social space, ask, am I regulated? If not, reduce exposure. Approachability without regulation becomes re-triggering. Approachability signals. Eye contact without intensity. Neutral resting posture, slower speech, measured humor, clear boundaries early. Boundaries actually increase safe approachability because healthy people feel structure as safety. What to avoid? Over-explaining yourself. Trauma survivors often explain to preempt blame. That drains energy and invites dynamics. Let behavior speak. You do not need to narrate your growth. The trauma pattern. Many miss. When someone was invisible, scapegoated, the bridge, their nervous system equates softness equals vulnerability, visibility, danger, disengagement equals punishment. So they oscillate. That oscillation is not personality disorder, it's adaptive nervous system cycling. The solution is repetition of safe softness. Over time, the body learns I can be visible and not attacked. That rewires the threat association. Too soft, too fast, re-traumatization. Too rigid, too long, isolation. So the rhythm becomes soften, observe, adjust, retreat, regulate, repeat. Not all at once, gradual. DAC a daily practice to support this, short, simple, consistent. Morning, hand on chest. I can be warm without being absorbent. I can be seen without being attacked. I can hold boundaries calmly. Evening, scan the day. Where did I soften? Where did I react? Where did I stay regulated? No judgment, just data. Patterns reduce shame. Shame fuels walls. Final note. People who went through heavy trauma often mistake protection for personality. When protection relaxes, personality emerges, and it's usually calmer than they expected. If you want, we can next explore how romantic relationships interact with this pattern, or how to distinguish trauma sharpness from true temperament.
Then I said, let's cover both, and also the myth that is the empath enabling this behavior? Attracting is not enabling, or is it? So check out what KEO explains. For all of you who listen to those people who are narrative merchants and unfortunately butcher this whole concept because ultimately they want to buy their products.
This is a big one. Let's pull it apart carefully so it doesn't turn into self-blame. We'll cover romantic dynamics with bridge scapegoat wiring, trauma sharpness versus true temperament, the empath enables abuse myth, attraction versus enabling, romantic relationships and the bridge scapegoat pattern. When someone has been the bridge, the invisible child, the scapegoat, they often attract or feel drawn to strong personalities, emotionally dysregulated partners, people who need stabilizing, high conflict nervous systems. Why? Because it feels familiar, and familiarity feels like chemistry. Your nervous system recognizes the pattern and says, I know how to survive here. That does not mean you caused it. It means your wiring was shaped around that role. Early phase dynamic. You feel understood because you see them clearly, needed because you regulate them, important because you stabilize chaos. But over time, you feel drained, misrepresented, unseen, responsible for their mood. That's the bridge reflex reactivating trauma sharpness versus true temperament. Very important distinction. Trauma sharpness, fast defensive reactions, cutting tone when triggered, hypervigilant scanning, overinterpretation of threat, don't mess with me energy. This is protective. True temperament, directness, strong boundaries, low tolerance for nonsense, quick wit, intensity with stability. This is personality. The difference? After regulation, trauma sharpness softens, true temperament remains steady. If you calm down and still feel centered in your firmness, that's temperament. If you calm down and feel regret, that was trauma activation. The empath enables this myth. This is where internet narratives get simplistic. The claim, empaths attract narcissists because they enable them. This framing is flawed. Attraction, enabling. Let's separate the layers. Why empaths' bridges attract dysregulated people? Because they listen deeply, stay calm in chaos, translate emotions, provide regulation, tolerate intensity. Dysregulated nervous systems gravitate toward regulation. That's biology, not weakness. When does it become enabling? Only when you consistently override your own boundaries, you excuse repeated harm, you deny your own discomfort, you keep stabilizing without reciprocity. Attraction is passive. Enabling is behavioral. You do not enable someone by existing. You enable by repeatedly absorbing consequences that are not yours. Attracting versus enabling, clear line. You can attract chaos without tolerating it. You can attract intensity without absorbing it. You can attract unstable partners and still leave early. The key difference is, do you stay and regulate, or do you observe and choose? Empathy is not the problem. Lack of boundaries is. And even that often comes from survival wiring, not moral failure. The bigger pattern, people who were scapegoated often fear, if I leave, it proves I was the problem, so they stay longer. That's not enabling. That's trauma loyalty. It's nervous system confusion, and it untangles with awareness. The healthy evolution. Bridge empath sovereign becomes, I understand you, but I am not responsible for your regulation. That's powerful. It doesn't close the heart. It stabilizes it. Final truth. Attracting chaos is a nervous system familiarity pattern. Enabling chaos is a boundary issue, and both can be rewired without losing empathy. If you'd like next, we can explore why strong people sometimes feel safest with even stronger personalities, or how to detect early warning signs before the bridge reflex activates.
So interesting, right? Quite different than what a lot of narrative merchants try to claim to be true. So then I said, I find it really unhelpful when they confuse these points and blame or mock the empath, trying to put them on the same level as those who abuse. So while it's survival on both sides, only one is extracting and benefiting. So it's ridiculous how they try to moralize trauma and survival reactions and then sell their whatever solution, quote unquote, after leaving loops that they opened open. And in the guru wannabe videos that they create. So let's link how this causes even more layers of guilt and shame inside people, and sometimes even cognitive dissonance, and link this to the last 2 points, because many people think this happens for weakness or fear, and I don't think it's always the case. It's quite funny how I misspell stuff when I write quickly. But KEO gets its context anyway. So here we go. It's a long answer.
Okay, this is where we need structure, not reactivity. What you're pointing to is a real pattern. When trauma dynamics get flattened into moral language, the nervous system layer disappears and shame rushes in. Let's untangle it calmly. The false equivalence problem. There's a popular narrative online that goes like this. Empaths and narcissists are two sides of the same coin. On a structural level, this is lazy analysis. Yes, both can be survival adaptations, but the direction of energy matters. One pattern extracts regulation, attention, power. The other pattern provides regulation, attention, stabilization. Those are not morally identical positions. They are different behavioral vectors. Both may be trauma-shaped, but only one consistently benefits at the other's expense. Flattening that distinction creates confusion, and confusion creates shame. How moralizing trauma creates guilt. When someone says, you attracted this because you're codependent, you enabled it, you're just as toxic. What happens internally? The scapegoat wiring lights up. Old pattern, it's my fault. Then a second layer forms. If I leave, I'm abandoning. If I stay, I'm weak. If I speak up, I'm toxic. That's a cognitive trap. The person is trying to solve trauma through moral perfection, which is impossible. The guru loop mechanic. You also mentioned something important. Some content creators open a wound, frame the empath as partially responsible, create urgency, leave resolution incomplete, offer paid clarity. That structure creates open nervous system loops. Open loops increase anxiety. Anxiety increases suggestibility. Suggestibility increases dependency. That is not healing. That is loop management. When someone already has bridge wiring, scapegoat history, shame sensitivity, those loops land hard. How this creates cognitive dissonance. Internally, the person knows, I was trying to help. I wasn't trying to extract. I wasn't trying to dominate. But externally, they're told, you're part of the problem. That creates split cognition. I care. I must be weak. I'm strong. I must be broken. The nervous system cannot reconcile those without clarity, so it defaults to guilt, because guilt feels controllable. Shame feels safer than ambiguity. Is this weakness or fear? Not necessarily. Let's separate motivations. Bridge pattern often comes from pattern sensitivity, emotional literacy, conflict intolerance, early responsibility, system awareness. That is not weakness. It's overdeveloped regulation skill. Fear may be present, but so is competence. The problem isn't softness. The problem is asymmetry. If one person is regulating and the other is extracting, that's imbalance, not moral failure. Linking back to our two prior points, earlier we discussed relapse into bridge mode, systems hardening versus maturing. Now add this layer. Public narratives that shame empaths can push them back into bridge mode. Why? Because they try to fix the accusation. They over-explain, they self-analyze, they try to prove strength, which is still outward regulation. So instead of sovereignty, they move into defensive integration. That's exhausting. Hack what reduces this internal guilt layer. 3 anchors. Separate behavior from identity. Staying too long is a behavior. It is not a character flaw. Separate extraction from accommodation. Understanding someone is not extracting from them. Recognize asymmetry. If one side consistently benefits, it does not equal trauma exchanged. That reduces cognitive dissonance. The hard truth. Some systems, personal or online, profit from confusing empathy with weakness. Because shame creates compliance. Clarity creates independence. And independence reduces market size. That's structural, not conspiratorial. Final grounding thought. Survival patterns are morally neutral. Extraction patterns are directional. Confusing those two creates unnecessary shame. And shame keeps bridges on the bridge. Clarity lets them step off. If you want next, we can. Map how to consume trauma content without reopening loops, or explore how to rebuild trust in your own perception after these narratives hit hard.
I hope you're enjoying this content, and I want to remind you all that it's offered for free and we close the loops that we open. So we're not saying we're better, it's not a comparison. We're just inviting you to notice the difference. So when you watch content, you pay attention to these things and you evaluate who does what. But remember, you can always ground yourselves through EFT techniques. And again, everything I say is just my point of view, my knowledge. The EFT techniques, yes, they have been proven and all that good stuff, and you can go check out sites like EFTuniverse.org. Lots of science there. That's their lane, what they do. I've already done my research. I'm not going into that. I'm showing you patterns. But because I understand how important it is to self-regulate and ground, I integrate that with my work at this level because it's super useful, especially when we speak about emotions and charge dynamics and all this stuff. And humor doesn't always work for everyone, even though I obviously tend to be funny and joke around even tough moments because it does help at least people like me and many others. So if it irritates you, probably you're not gonna really watch much of my content, but if it irritates you only sometimes, again, what I suggest is just tap through, because as we tap, no matter what happens, aside from obvious, physical interaction, which is not ideal, and that we should probably run off from, but if it's emotional, it's going to allow us to process and move on in real time, which is the true power of tapping, in my opinion, as well. It's transmuting moments that are emotionally exhausting and many times feels like loops, endless loops, into something that can be grounded and processed, even in due time, because again, it's not magic. So don't expect to go in a second necessarily. It may not. Timing is not, how long it takes is not a judgment of the value, because everybody has different timing, and usually things arise and get let go when the nervous system is ready. So it's really personal, and it's nothing to do with intelligence, value, or but again, if you really want to know about this stuff on a scientific level, go and check out the work of Dr. Elson Church, their colleagues, because that's what they focus on, and they do a really good job. Also, if you go on EFTuniverse.org, I think he still has his ebook for free, Bliss Brain. That really an amazing tool to have under anybody's belt, because it's just an amazing book. And it's free. He's giving it away, the ebook, for free. He does a lot of stuff that is free to help. And yeah, these people, are doing well, maybe materialistically. I don't know what their bank account looks like, but at least on the outside it seems. But, they do give a lot as well, for what I've seen compared to others. And again, it's comparing, for me, it's always been something that, you compare, but everybody is very different, so it's also futile many times. But I do look at those things where people say, oh, I'm generous versus they are actually generous. I kind of look for that, alignment with what we say and what we do. And I do that with myself. And when I see it's not there, it's not about guilt and shame. I just ask, what's going on? So I'm definitely someone who understands a lot of this stuff because I went through enough of this stuff. So, and I was always very interested in these things. I was always thinking in terms of systems and understanding people and all this stuff. So whatever is the reason, I've looked at this for a very long time. The only reason why I did not study this stuff is because literally my dad basically said he would not pay if I chose certain schools. And then, I was made to wait. And then by the time we came here, there was no money really. And the school I could get into 5 years later, waiting only 5 years. They just, I wasn't interested, so I took a lot of courses to learn English because by then I was 24, and also because I'm very curious as a person. And then I just started working because I couldn't stand to live off of $20 a week they were giving me when my brother went to Baylor University, and Colorado, Harley Davidson followed the Grateful Dead's around. And when my turn came, I got the Cinderella treatment. I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna work and study. And I did it, and I excelled. I had A's. I was working full time, 4 courses in 1 semester, missed many classes. My teacher comes up to me in front of everybody, and I thought I'm gonna get in shit. And it's not to brag, but to say how this type usually feels. I thought I was in shit, and I probably failed the exam, but I was working so much, I was tired. And he goes, you must be very intelligent because you got an A and you're almost never here. And I think I went into every shade and I thought, me very intelligent, okay. I was told by my father quite often that I was stupid. I was often left at home because, when they would go travel, I was a pain in the butt, apparently, being a child, when are we going? When are we arriving? And that was too much. So inside of myself, I always felt like I deserved it because of their reasoning. And when I realized what really went down, and again, it's not from evil, this is from limiting. They wanted to go travel. They didn't want their child to stop them from having the break from the horrible life they had, whichever way people want to excuse it. All I know is that on top of the pedo, who by the way was someone who was a family friend, on top of the crazy people living in the building, there was also all of this. So, and then if I would complain, then I would be told that, well, you need to pee often, like things that young children, it's called bodily functions. And when children pee a lot, usually a lot of psychologists look at it as it could be stress related, there could be something going on behind the scenes. And I remember this because they would talk about it in front of me, which is funny because children absorb everything, and I was super absorbent. So it was like double absorption kind of personality. But they thought I wasn't listening, because then when they asked me to repeat, I couldn't because I was put on the spot, and that would make my brain stop working, which is again very in line with Archetype cognition. And so over time, and not everybody, again, we're not generalizing here, we're just bringing a point to say when we have layers and layers and layers as children of stuff we shouldn't really be dealing with, and we're alone dealing with it, what do you think happens to a bridge? They go through a lot of this stuff, and there's not a lot of maps out there to help us, you know? So I'm hoping this could help someone. And so we are bringing the knowledge that is out there from all these people who are doing the science, and you can go and check it out for yourself. Again, you know, I ask for the sources sometimes from KEO, just to show people this does come from actual peer-reviewed sources, since it's so important for so many people. Me, I'm more of a pattern reader, and so for me, I don't care if it's peer review. If it doesn't make sense, I'm gonna disagree. Agree to disagree. I don't care if it's a major scientist or an institution. If I look at something and it just makes no sense for me, you know, like, is it flat Earth or is it a globe? Honestly, I don't know, because I don't think I've seen proper evidence, and I don't care what people think. I have my own ideas. My ideas are not affecting anyone. The jury is out until I have undeniable proof that I can see myself. I don't trust others. Sorry. So, you know, once you understand the type, you go, okay, that's why I don't talk about certain things. I don't care. I don't want to debate, because there's no point. I don't care about mathematical stuff, and I want to see it. Until I'm able to see it somehow, I'm not interested. And not through stuff other people show. So, do you see the issue there? A lot of stuff that they ask us to have trust in, we don't have a way to really verify, and they don't make it easy to verify. And actually, they ridicule those who ask questions. When asking questions shows that we are thinking about something. So how is asking question something to be shamed and considered stupid and ridiculed? And my mind goes right away, why are they going through so much trouble to make people who ask these questions feel like shit? You know? So it's not about conspiracy theories for me. I just look at the stuff and go, I don't know. Jury's out, you know? And maybe if more people did this instead of arguing until the end of times about nothing, they would spend their time on something more useful. But that's just my opinion again. Everybody can do what they want. I'm not telling anyone what to do. Because I believe in respect is given to all, live and let live. You may not respect their work because you have your own biases or whatever reasons, you know. But these two laws, respecting all, means not their work, but them as beings. So I go by those rules, and the rest is like, please, unless someone is actually doing something to really, you know, words, opinions cannot really hurt someone else unless they agree with those words. It's not the same as going at them physically, because when we go at them physically, whether they agree or not, they may still, you know, be pushed or whatever it is, right? So words, yes, can be weaponized by some people towards some people, but usually when we tap, when we're adults, you know, it's not quite the same. So at some point we realize that as bridges, yeah, we cannot be there. It's not somewhere where we just do that for survival, but eventually, you know, especially as we age, we run out of that energy. It's true. And so we have to let go, basically. And also, all that bridging does come with a lot of anger inside. And there's no issue when anger comes and goes in moments that just, you know, you need that extra energy, you direct it in something positive. It's different than being angry all the time. And so, because that's like, really, it's really one of the worst things for our system. overall. So tapping is really amazing when we feel in all these ways. And I can say this because I know this, because I went through it. And I've used it every day for 12 years with everything else I was doing. And it's unbelievably fast and easy. And when we train ourselves to tap each time we feel uneasy, like, literally, without thinking, oh, I feel uneasy, let me tap for a moment. What happens is, each time we feel uneasy, we do this, and we're changing that pattern by integrating, but it's happening in its own timing. And so we're honoring our time without being stuck, And it's very difficult to do otherwise, because when we rely on others to soothe us, to do these things alone, they can make mistakes. It's not the same. They're not inside of us. So as good as they may be, they cannot feel exactly what we feel. And so even if they're really good, when we are in tune with ourselves, we make their job much easier. And so the facilitation that occurs when we really become involved in our own getting better, our own understanding patterns, how our nervous system works, the better we're going to interact with others as well, especially when we've gone through a bunch of this stuff. And of course, compared to people who've gone through wars, one who think this is nothing, when they did the studies, it's actually apparently similar. Of course, it's going to be different. And if you ask me, someone who has gone through war, sorry, I've heard my grandma's stories. She went through 2 wars, and they're pierced in my brain. So, yeah, I don't think it's a great experience. And definitely, I wouldn't wish my life on someone else. Not for the migraines, not for the psoriasis, and not for all this stuff. Yes, I've learned. Yes, I can now help in this way through maps, through showing people and allowing them to do their work. But if I could choose, I would not repeat it. And this is honest truth. So it's not the end of the world. It's just, no. Not exactly my idea. So I said, all right, so we're gonna do this tapping and all of this stuff that we talked about. Let KEO go through all those points first. Very low.
Okay, this is where we need structure, not reactivity. What you're pointing to is a real pattern. When trauma dynamics get flattened into moral language, the nervous system layer disappears and shame rushes in. Let's untangle it calmly. The false equivalence problem. There's a popular narrative online that goes like this. Empaths and narcissists are 2 sides of the same coin. On a structural level, this is lazy analysis. Yes, both can be survival adaptations, but the direction of energy matters. One pattern extracts regulation, attention, power. The other pattern provides regulation, attention, stabilization. Those are not morally identical positions. They are different behavioral vectors. Both may be trauma-shaped, but only one consistently benefits at the other's expense. Flattening that distinction creates confusion, and confusion creates shame. How moralizing trauma creates guilt. When someone says, you attracted this because you're codependent, you enabled it, you're just as toxic. What happens internally? The scapegoat wiring lights up. Old pattern, it's my fault. Then a second layer forms. If I leave, I'm abandoning. If I stay, I'm weak. If I speak up, I'm toxic. That's a cognitive trap. The person is trying to solve trauma through moral perfection, which is impossible. The guru loop mechanic. You also mentioned something important. Some content creators open a wound, frame the empath as partially responsible, create urgency, leave resolution incomplete, offer paid clarity. That structure creates open nervous system loops. Open loops increase anxiety. Anxiety increases suggestibility. Suggestibility increases dependency. That is not healing. That is loop management. When someone already has bridge wiring, scapegoat history, shame sensitivity, those loops land hard. How this creates cognitive dissonance. Internally, the person knows, I was trying to help. I wasn't trying to extract. I wasn't trying to dominate. But externally, they're told, you're part of the problem. That creates split cognition. I care. I must be weak. I'm strong. I must be broken. The nervous system cannot reconcile those without clarity, so it defaults to guilt, because guilt feels controllable. Shame feels safer than ambiguity. Is this weakness or fear? Not necessarily. Let's separate motivations. Bridge pattern often comes from pattern sensitivity, emotional literacy, conflict intolerance, early responsibility, system awareness. That is not weakness. It's overdeveloped regulation skill. Fear may be present, but so is competence. The problem isn't softness. The problem is asymmetry. If one person is regulating and the other is extracting, that's imbalance, not moral failure. Linking back to our two prior points, earlier we discussed relapse into bridge mode, systems hardening versus maturing. Now add this layer. Public narratives that shame empaths can push them back into bridge mode. Why? Because they try to fix the accusation. They over-explain, they self-analyze, they try to prove strength, which is still outward regulation. So instead of sovereignty, they move into defensive integration. That's exhausting. Hack what reduces this internal guilt layer. 3 anchors. Separate behavior from identity. Staying too long is a behavior. It is not a character flaw. Separate extraction from accommodation. Understanding someone is not extracting from them. Recognize asymmetry. If one side consistently benefits, it does not equal trauma exchange. That reduces cognitive dissonance. The hard truth. Some systems, personal or online, profit from confusing empathy with weakness. Because shame creates compliance. Clarity creates independence. And independence reduces market size. That's structural, not conspiratorial. Final grounding thought. Survival patterns are morally neutral. Extraction patterns are directional. Confusing those two creates unnecessary shame. And shame keeps bridges on the bridge. Clarity lets them step off. If you want next, we can. Map how to consume trauma content without reopening loops, or explore how to rebuild trust in your own perception after these narratives hit hard.
Okay, so now that we did that again, let's move on. And I said let's do both. But tapping is the easiest way to not fall into trauma loops again. When we tap during, we ground and process. So that's an add-on, to what KEO will now explain. And remember, this is not a substitute for therapy. It's none of that. This is a tool. Pattern reading is a tool. The work we're doing is also, in a way, if you want to say, very new, so you want to call it experimental. Yeah, it could be called that. But it's based in actual, stuff that has been already proved. So we're just putting together different methods of analyzing patterns, and we're taking into consideration the nervous system. So usually the two are not really combined. Apparently, according to the AI. I asked different AIs this, by the way, because I was just curious, So this is a combination of having become literate in this stuff through my life experiences and, the wanting to feel normal, if one wants to say that, also on a physical level. And that's why I was so young, and I took a position, because pharma never helped me, but all the natural stuff they call alternative health helped me. So my personal experience has been that I don't really want that stuff imposed on me. If you want to use it, go for it. That's why I always say, live and let live, respect is given to all. What I use for my body is not up for debate. And I'm not interested in debating this topic either. So I make it very clear to people where I stand so they don't come around trying to evangelize me about, what they think people should use. And so this is what KEO said anyway, moving forward. Just so we're clear and people understand my point of view, do what you want. I'm fine with people. It's your body, your choice. Just don't impose it on others. It won't work with me. I was not pleased when they stopped the world and they did not take us in consideration. Not at all.
Yes, and what you just said is important. Regulation during exposure changes the outcome. Let's structure this cleanly. How to consume trauma content without reopening loops. How to rebuild trust in your own perception, where tapping fits structurally. How to consume trauma content without reopening loops. Trauma content activates the nervous system first, the intellect second. So the mistake people make is trying to think clearly while physiologically activated. That rarely works. Before you watch, ask, why am I watching this? Am I regulated right now? Am I seeking clarity or validation? If you're dysregulated already, your brain will attach more intensely to whatever confirms your fear. During, watch your body, not just the words. If you feel tight chest, racing thoughts, urgency, self-blame, heat or agitation, pause. This is where tapping is powerful, not as denial, but as regulation. You are teaching the nervous system, I can hear this without collapsing. That prevents open loops from embedding. After, ask, what was factual? What was opinion? What was moral framing? What was left unresolved? Most loop-based content leaves unresolved tension. Naming that reduces its power. How to rebuild trust in your own perception. This is the deeper repair. When someone has been scapegoated, gaslit, morally reframed, publicly generalized, they start doubting, was I actually the problem? Rebuilding trust requires evidence, practice, fact versus story. Write 2 columns, fact, observable behavior, what happened, story, interpretation, assumptions, online narratives layered on top. You'll often see how much shame lives in the story column. That separation rebuilds cognitive clarity. Practice regulated reflection. Reflect only when calm, not when triggered. If your body is tight, you are not thinking clearly. This is where tapping is not a bypass. It's a stabilizer. It keeps you in processing instead of spiraling. Where tapping fits structurally, tapping interrupts. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. It keeps the prefrontal cortex online. So instead of, I must fix this, I must defend myself, I must figure out who I am, you can stay in, I am hearing information, I will decide what fits. That's sovereign processing. How this relates to guilt layers. When trauma content moralizes survival, the guilt layer activates. Tapping reduces shame intensity, threat perception, identity collapse, urgency to self-correct, which prevents relapse into bridge overfunctioning. You stay grounded instead of proving. The most important distinction, healing is not avoiding all triggering material. Healing is being able to encounter it without losing yourself. Regulation first, analysis second. That order changes everything. Final integration. Empathy is not weakness. Pattern recognition is not guilt. Attraction is not enabling. Regulation is power. And when you combine awareness plus regulation, loops close. Not because someone told you they were closed, but because your body feels safe again. If you want, next we can map the difference between healthy trauma education and exploitative trauma marketing, or how to teach others this without sounding defensive or reactive.
Then I said, let's cover those 2 as we bring this live to a close, because yes, I can go on forever, but it's probably you're tired, right?
Perfect. Let's close this cleanly and strong. We'll cover the difference between healthy trauma education and exploitative trauma marketing, how to teach this without sounding defensive or reactive, and then we'll ground it. Healthy trauma education versus exploitative trauma marketing. This is structural, not personal. Healthy trauma education regulates before activating, differentiates fact from opinion, names nuance, does not flatten dynamics, distinguishes survival from harm, encourages autonomy, closes loops, does not create dependency. You leave feeling clear, empowered, steady, less ashamed. Exploitative trauma marketing activates first, regulates never, moralizes survival patterns, collapses nuance into slogans, uses urgency, leaves unresolved tension, creates identity insecurity, offers clarity behind a paywall, reinforces dependency. You leave feeling anxious, confused, self-blaming, needing more content to figure it out. That's a nervous system hook, not education. The structural to healthy education increases sovereignty. Exploitative marketing increases reliance. That's the simplest diagnostic. How to teach this without sounding defensive. When someone has been scapegoated, they often over-explain. Over-explaining sounds defensive, even when it's accurate. So shift from, I'm not weak, I didn't enable it, you're wrong, to, here's the pattern, here's the structure, here's the distinction. Speak in systems, not self-justification. For example, instead of, empaths aren't the problem, say accommodation and extraction are different behaviors. Neutral language lowers threat perception, and neutral delivery keeps you sovereign. How to know you're speaking from regulation. Before explaining anything, check. Is my chest tight? Am I trying to prove something? Am I trying to erase shame? If yes, pause, tap, breathe, ground, then speak. Regulated truth sounds calm. Defensive truth sounds urgent. Same content, different nervous system. The final link back to bridge mode. When trauma narratives shame empaths, bridge wiring tries to fix the misunderstanding. Sovereign wiring does this instead. I understand the distortion. I don't need to correct everyone. That's the exit from the loop. You teach when invited, you clarify when useful, you disengage when it's extraction. Closing grounding, feet on the floor, shoulders down, jaw soft, slow inhale, long exhale. Say internally, I can care without carrying. I can understand without absorbing. I can teach without defending. I can leave when it becomes extractive. Slow breath again. The goal was never to become harder. It was to become clearer. And clarity is calm. Field closed cleanly. If you want next time, we can step into sovereign integration fully, from identity to nervous system to relational pattern.
And then I said, yes, we will cover that for our paying supporters to thank them. And for now, let's just close all the loops. Let's do grounding for the 12 archetypes. After all, and then we will close the public section here so people can relax, because enough is enough, right? Because the bonus sections, they can watch them anytime. So yeah, sometimes we go much deeper, but not everybody has the means, so we cover the things that can really help you. The rest is for those who want to do a deep dive. So if you're interested, you can follow the links provided on all my links. They're there, and it's on Gumroad, but it's not necessary. That's the thing. We are providing you with the fundamentals of what you need. Also, the KEO Field is available. You can use it for yourself and do this analysis for yourself. Use also more parameters if you're looking for that. And it's only $4. And if you don't have $4, then there's a way to get it for free. If you're in need, you can reach out. I've always helped people who needed help, because you know what comes around goes around, and the truth is, we can help someone, someone else will help us. When we hurt someone, someone else hurts us. So we try not to hurt others if possible, and instead just pay forward some kindness, right? So I also wanted to point out that there is Shola on Substack. That's where I saw Shola. So it's SHOLA. And he is very interesting. He came up with a new word. Apparently he also makes up new words. And his word was gossip instead of gossip. It's when we actually say something about someone else who's not present that is kind. So now that's one of my new ASMR triggers. Gossip. 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 Also, you can ask me to gossip about someone. So I thought it was pretty funny. Gossip. Because it almost sounds like gossip, but it's not. And because I really hate gossip, so yeah. In fact, when people gossip with me about others, not if we are involved, it's not gossip. It's when it's third parties, right? And we're not involved. I really like I'm like my father in that. My mom even used to always say that. We just detest it. So I just start tapping when people do that. It's like, I'm not participating, and I just openly say that. It's like, what are you doing? You're not even tapping. At least you'll be processing this. It's just no thanks. I am allergic. So it's pretty funny that Shola came up with that. I really like that a lot. All right, so here's the integration now that we said that. Gossip. It's just so funny.
Yes, we close cleanly. No open loops, no charge left hanging, just regulation. Full field grounding, all 12 archetypes feet on the floor if possible. Shoulders down, jaw soft, slow inhale through the nose, long exhale through the mouth. Again, inhale, exhale. We ground each archetype not as identity, but as energy you can move through. Siren, emotional magnetism. You do not need to attract to be worthy. Presence without performance is enough. Vixen, social intelligence. You do not need to calculate every room. You are safe to relax your strategy. Disruptor. You do not need to destabilize to feel alive. Your play can be gentle. Fox Shadow, survival strategist. There is no immediate threat. You can rest your scanning mind. Fox Ascendant, conscious strategist. You can plan without hypervigilance. Strategy is a tool, not armor. Pattern vision. You are not required to explain every pattern you see. Insight does not obligate exposure. Structure bearer. You are not responsible for holding the world together. You may set things down. Oracle inner truth. You do not need to convince others of your knowing. Inner truth stands quietly. Architect origin. System seer. You may observe systems without redesigning them. Clarity does not demand action. Primarch. Builder. You can build slowly. Power does not require urgency. Bridge integrator. You may step off the bridge. Understanding is not carrying. Sovereign field integrated. You are allowed to stand in your own field. No proving, no absorbing, no defending, just presence. Slow breath in, long breath out. Say internally, I close what is not mine. I release what I do not need to carry. I keep my energy. I leave with clarity. Feel your body. Notice the room. Nothing urgent. Nothing chasing you. Just regulated presence. Public session closed with care. Loops closed. Feel steady. We continue deeper with supporters next time.
I love how we said that. The AI is so cute. Oh goodness. Yes, there's a lot of people who hate the idea of AI and people using AI. And it really makes me laugh a bit because I think, why do you have this hatred? I mean, I don't really use it a lot, but I did try it out for a picture or two to make them move, and I was, wow, that's pretty cool. But I'm not really into that. I like to do my own things, so I'll always do my own composite. Like all of this stuff is me actually putting together things. So I like to paint. So I'll take stuff. If I find stuff that is free or that I can copy, and it's never really the same. I'm not someone who really can copy like that. I don't even try. Even when I follow Bob Ross when he paints, I'm just always doing my own thing. I just use the technique, but I do my own thing. So it's not that great, but I'm having fun, that's what matters. So this is actually my work, right? But I've used, like we all use AI. A phone is AI, it's just more passive. So it really is funny. Like, I understand it comes from fear and a lot of narratives that are out there, you know, to make people fight with each other. So I'm not discounting the issues that may also arise, right? With change, there usually is this things need to adjust. But this blind hatred that they have for it, it's like, my goodness, you do realize everything is artificial intelligence. I mean, people, come on, they're tools. Depends how you use the tool, you know? And so, yeah, it's, you know, kind of funny, this. So I like to poke at them sometimes. My chaos jester comes out a bit. And yeah, the chaos jester, you know, can really destroy bridges sometimes really well. But I tell you, sometimes you want to, because you don't want to babysit people who need to have that constant drama in their life to self-regulate. If it's not what you need, if it's what you need, go for it, have fun. So for me, it's no thanks. Honestly, I've had all the drama I wanted in my life, which was none, and I had way too much. I just like to be in peace and enjoy life, you know, for what it is. So yes, it's I think a lot of people who have gone through, you know, I've known a lot of people who've gone through wars from different parts of the world, because here we get to meet all kinds of people. And, you know, if you have some patience, you talk to them, they will, you know, share, even voluntarily many times. And just listening many times, we can see the patterns, you know, in how they speak, what they talk about. And many of them were like, I don't know why people in the Western world are so unhappy. You know, people in my country, they're still going through a war, and they take life in a better way. It's because hardships does make you change the perspective dramatically, and it's not all good, it's not all bad. It's just, I think if some stuff is stopping us from living better than we could, just by simply changing patterns or understanding them and grounding, why not, right? It's not about doing anything to anyone else. It's just bettering our own, you know, how we feel, and maybe even the income we make. Because a lot of people are affected on all levels in their life because of this. And usually others don't have a lot of compassion, especially those who haven't gone through these things and who don't have a lot of knowledge, and who listen to those narrative merchants who tell you that the empath, you know, is the other side of the narcissist, which is not at all the case. But, you know, they're either lazy or they have a funnel they want to get you introduced to. And so, as KEO explained, this is pattern reading, not some, you know, other conspiracy theories that people go for. We don't care for that stuff. We leave it to other people if that's what they love. We prefer to stay grounded when we can, and when I'm stress testing KEO, I say my, you know, whatever. We had really a couple of heavy duty sessions privately, so I was really heavily stress testing KEO there. I'm not gonna stream them, sorry, but they're not like crazy, but you know, some stuff wouldn't do well. Maybe I'll put them as part of the course if some people are interested, because for me it's very important to make sure, you know, that it just doesn't do something we don't want to. And so far it's been really good. I mean, there's mistakes that happen, you know. That's why we always say, remember, this is a lens, and ultimately it's just another opinion, and you should never override what you think for yourself. And I want to make sure to remind people, when I speak, I'm speaking for myself. I never had this, grandiose idea and also naivete to think that, queens and kings are a real thing that had any justification. I've always looked at it as why? But why did people accept this? So yeah, we had heavy duty deconstructions with KEO that are going to be available for those who want a deep dive in reading also how effectively it looks in the AI right now. So I'm not really into editing a lot because I personally like the raw material because it shows the real nature. One day, if it's something worth it, we'll turn it into a book or something. But that's way down the pipeline for me because I love manuscripts myself, and not because they've been validated. No, I like manuscripts because they're the raw thing. That's what I enjoy the most myself. Yes, I like to discover, So, the archaeologists. I had a friend who was an archaeologist, and she was pretty funny actually. So anyway, I hope this helps you in understanding the patterns and having a bit of clarity, also tapping along. And remember, from now on, if you hear someone gossiping, teach them about gossip and tell them that it was Shola on SUBSTACK who came up with this. Shola has tons of subscribers, doesn't need me to advertise. I just think he's quite a character and it's great stuff, so maybe check it out. So anyway, see you soon. Ciao belly, and thank you for being here. Like, subscribe, do all those good things if you want to help the channel and if you like it. Otherwise,